Hello and welcome back to my channel and another episode of Talks with Crystal Skulls. I'm your host Tanya Marie, and today we continue with our exploration into the world of crystal skulls, how they're helping to co-create this experience, this evolution on Earth at this current time. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, each of these new shares will involve either a personal experience from me, could be interviews with amazing guests. We'll also take some deep dives with the speakers and see what they want to share. Sometimes they'll have some messages to impart, and in fact today we do get to hear what some of them have to say, which will be fun. And anything that I'm guided to from higher self and through them to expound upon, and perhaps even expound upon some comments or questions or ideas that any of you viewers bring forth in the coming time that we share together. So today the speakers, as I said, told me they'd like to share a message, and that will be at the end of today's share. And it's going to happen as both a collective from all 22, and also we're going to touch in with 2 individual skulls in particular who wanted to step forth. So again, that will come later on. But I'm also going to be sharing a little bit about connecting with crystal skulls today and some of the ways you could welcome them into your hearts and your home. So stay tuned for that. But first I want to briefly talk about, again, something I hit on a little bit in the first episode is the shape of the crystal skull and how that might actually support having a more intimate relationship for some people than, say, a crystal that comes straight from the earth, right? That's not carved. I spoke about it, like I said, a little bit, and some people have chimed in. And in particular, I loved one of the comments that a viewer posted on that episode. And what they said was, the head form is perfect to communicate and easier for them to attune the frequency to talk to you. I thought that was a pretty keen observation, and it goes along with and resonates with my sense of things and my personal experience, because indeed the shape of the crystal skull as a reflection of ourselves when we're looking at them makes them have more of an affinity, right? We feel more draw, more magnetism, more of that mirror when we look at them, and it could help us to feel more connected to them as another being, because we do tend to feel drawn to those who are more like ourselves, right? They feel more like familiars or direct mirrors, synergistic channels, rather than being something that's completely foreign and outside of us, something that doesn't reflect our own form. And that's not to say that there aren't people who would still fear that skull form. We're talking more right now about people who are drawn to crystal skulls and or are feeling the affinity for the first time and wondering about that. Because, of course, there is going to be some put off with some people if it's touching upon any conditioned judgments and fears around the skull. But maybe some of the things that we talk about, if you're coming to this for the first time and do have some of that in your experience that you're having, might help soften that from looking at it from a different perspective. So I believe that reflection of a similar form or something recognizable helps them to take on a personality, to share particular energies and feelings based on the shape of the features, their head, the colors, even the inclusions or patterns that show up in that particular stone or crystal that the skull is carved out of. And in this way, I think our brains can more easily process information and interpret with greater effectiveness what we're seeing and what's coming through. And communication can then perhaps take on more clarity when we have that feeling and visual resonance with them. And Then we have the shape of the crystal skull with a head and a crown area that houses a brain. So we associate heads and brains with knowledge and intellect, right? So although the crystals contain knowledge and wisdom on their own, even without being carved into a skull, the skull could actually feel more reflective of this capability and having the capacity to store such information inside what we know within ourselves to be that place for this. So it makes it a little easier maybe for our brains to wrap around that, to embrace the fact that, what we're looking at, this skull that looks very much like myself, could actually store information because, look, I have a skull, I have a brain within that skull, and there's where all my knowledge is stored, or at least where I think all of that knowledge is stored, and so therefore the skull reflects that. And as I mentioned in the first episode, certain forms that crystals are carved into, like towers or pyramids, can also actually help to enhance and focus energy. So having a crystal skull can be a way to focus spiritual information and messaging from greater consciousness into a more tangible 3D form. It's like that manifesting into a reality. What feels ethereal seems to be more accessible, relatable, attainable, all of those kinds of things. So it's a bridging and integration that takes place. So the crystals, in fact, can be, whether literally or symbolically to us, bridges between the cosmos and earth, spirit and body, and helping to access spiritual knowledge for practical use. And while I said the crystal skull in many ways can be easier to feel that relatability for some people over an uncarved crystal that just comes straight from the earth, a crystal skull can also in many ways be easier for us to hear messages from rather than maybe a person even. Why? Because the skull breaks down boundaries, if you think about it, and other kinds of conditioning we have to things such as ethnicity, race, skin color, things like that. So the skull, even though it has different colors based on the stone and crystal it's carved into, there's no defining limitation that's conditioned in our brains to associate with that, or like we might have with another person. And so the skull makes that, again, an easier channel to receive from, because we have less conditioning and patterning creating any boundaries or triggers or blocks. So judgments are easier to release so that we can see the skull more as a symbol or a projection of the human collective at large, or even a cosmic collective, if you want to say, not even just speaking in the human terms, but speaking as cosmic beings. So even, say, a crystal skull that's carved to look like what we call a star being, or has a more extraterrestrial sort of shape, or some star travelers, those ones might actually be bridging connection with that cosmic collective and that part of us that they represent as well. So we might feel more open to even information coming in on a whole other level as well through the skull, because the skull will take away any fears or ideas we have about that kind of thing as well. So that's not to say that there can't be other kinds of judgments and fears around skulls in general, like I said, but then you might just not be drawn to skulls, and that's okay. It might not be your thing. There's many other modalities, tools, for lack of a better word, that one can choose or have access to work in similar ways. But we're talking again about people who are drawn to skulls and might have an affinity to them, what that could actually be helping us with more, and why it might be easier for us to connect. Some of those fears, they may keep us away from a particular type of work, but again, that's perfect because everybody's on a different path and a different journey, and that just might not be that person's path. So if you have a block with a skull, maybe it is actually turning you to something else. Or maybe it's the stepping stone or that connective dot to get you to the next place. So there's always a reason for why we feel anything, whether it's a trigger, a challenge, more ease, more affinity. There's something being said about that. And so it's either something that we can look at and explore and maybe surpass and evolve with, or it's just not our thing and it's going to help direct us to something else. So in any and either event, there's always something, a silver lining with how we're experiencing anything, and in particular, as we're talking about crystal skulls. So in many ways, crystal skulls could actually be easier for more people, because of all the things that I've just said, to enjoy a relationship with them than perhaps, say, a crystal, because a crystal that's not carved is going to speak to a particular person, or maybe it involves a little bit more imagination and a little bit more openness, because you can actually receive wisdom and knowledge from them, and a personality and a name. It's just that it might be more of a stretch for some people. So the crystal skull's affinity to your own image, a mirror image of you, can be easier for some people, I think, because they truly look like your friend or your guide, right? So if you can work through the layers or patterns that feel uncomfortable around a skull, then you might actually find the skull to be quite a companion and spiritual ally. Crystal skulls have been very familiar to the ancients. Been around for a long time. So even if they're new to some of us, as we mentioned in the first episode, they predate us and go way back to ancient civilizations and beyond. I read somewhere that crystals coming out from the earth was like unearthing parts of ourselves, and that really resonated with me. That this crystal skulls can add more meaning to that, like you're discovering the essence of who you are reflected and experiencing this rebirth when you're loving and cradling or holding a crystal skull in your hands. It's sort of bringing through also that connection with our inner child, I feel. So unearthing parts of ourselves, not just in this life, although would be, and it could be from childhood up till now, but it could be even beyond that in other lifetimes. And so there's so many pieces and retrievals that can take place in that unearthing process. So I just liked that sort of metaphor of unearthing crystals and then unearthing parts of ourselves in that process. It's a remembering that takes place. So everything I feel that you're curiously discovering, retrieving, feeling into, listening to, is like a rekindling of the relationship you have with yourself and a nurturing of the inner child back to his or her own strength. So it's really, if you can look at things from different perspectives and see them greater than just what's in front of you and one-dimensional, you can sort of open a whole other experience and a whole potential of magical possibilities around things. And just curiosity in general helps bring in new perspectives, helps bring in new experiences, and opens us up to much more and receiving much more. And as I said in the first episode, and I'll probably always, because I love hitting on the multidimensionality aspects, the multidimensional perspective that these crystal skull beings are actually projections of your highest version of you or me that are speaking to you, then when you engage with them, you're helping to activate and awaken the parts of you into empowerment, those multidimensional aspects. So that's just another way to see a wider potential from the crystal skulls as well. All of the things that I talked about for why they might be more resonant, and maybe those even take you on a further journey of what some of the stuff I said means to you and your relationship to that. But even so, as well, about those multidimensional aspects, the bridging between guide and yourself or higher self, and the bridging that they do even to help us communicate beyond ourselves into those cosmic or multidimensional realms, which some of that is us and some of that is other aspects of us or the collective. So there's a lot there to ruminate on. So I hope you'll explore that. And as I mentioned, as we move into our next part that I wanted to talk about, I'm not going to speak about one way to do something, or that there's a right or a wrong way to do something, but I do get a lot of questions around how to work with crystal skulls and crystals in general, how to cleanse them, what's the process when you bring one home, what's even the process of choosing one, and so forth and so on. So I'd like to just hit on some of my personal experiences with this and some of the things that I do. I'm not, going into all of it, but at least they may be little springboards for some of you. Since I get so many of these questions, I feel that I'm going to at least share some snippets here and there, because I find that some people just don't either know where to start, and these can be helpful, and then you can build upon that and be creative. Or some people are just really looking for confirmation, like many of us do, and that's why these kinds of spaces where community can come together and share experiences can be supportive, so people feel more confident in what they're doing and get that feedback that helps them to trust themselves more. So anything that does that, I like to support. So this next segment is about my process, my personal experience with welcoming in a crystal skull and some of the stuff I might do. So when I bring home a crystal or crystal skull, first thing I do is I'll assess any additional need of cleansing that the skull might need. There's sometimes they come and they need a lot of work, and sometimes they come and they're really pure because the people that they've passed through, or the one person maybe even that it passed through before me, has really nurtured things in a similar way to what I'll share, and so they feel like they're already ready. And so those ones don't need a lot of work. Others might. So I like to assess that. And since I am I'm trained in Reiki, so I use Reiki. I also use other forms of energy. I will use that to cleanse the crystal. But other ways I'll get into in a moment will also involve like nature. I also like to empower an activation for them, which means I like to help them to return to their highest vibration. That's my intent. So I'm not infusing something different or new or trying to program them with something. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to support them back into their most natural, authentic being before anyone touched them. Just coming from the earth or receiving whatever they did from the cosmos, just that pure state of embodiment. So that's my intent when I'm cleansing and activating them, charging them. And then I may assess what they want. Like intuitionally, I will receive an impression, and some might want to go in flowing fresh water. And living in the mountains here, in the Alpine mountains, we have, really pure, great water. So that could mean taking them to a creek, a river. There's many lakes, and placing them in there. I also like to put them in my garden. My garden sits right on the edge of the forest, so there's a lot of great energies there, and I will either just put them out into the garden amongst the plants and flowers, or particular statues. I have some animals, rabbits, fairies, gnomes in my garden, so I'll see if any want to go out there. I do have a lot of raw quartz and other types of stones out in the garden they may want to be with, and some I even bury slightly into the dirt, so they're going through another rebirthing process. And I'll leave them out for a good cycle of sunlight and moonlight, so that they can get a nice bath with all of that. And I may even invite some of the fae and elementals of the land, my forest animal friends, to join in and do anything that they see to support the crystal or crystal skulls with. So when I bring them home, that's the welcoming process, right? That's the initiation that's taking place between the two of us, me and the crystal skull. And so I take that slowly. I don't just jump into working with the crystal skulls. It's more about just making them feel at home and just exploring each other. So I'll hold them and explore like all the uniqueness around them. I'll spend some time looking at all the little details that I see in that moment. Not everything's always revealed right away, as many of you know when you look at crystals and skulls. They show you rainbows sometimes, they don't other times. All of a sudden something pops up you didn't see before. It's just where you're at in that moment, and what you're ready for is what you are shown. And sometimes things can manifest that weren't even there also, because they are constantly transforming and going through their own evolution as well. So they can change colors, they can have inclusions you've never seen, all that kind of stuff. So it's fun to take an assessment of things when they first come to you, because it'll be interesting and exciting to see that evolution. So I look at all of that. I look at the colors, I look at the faces. Are there etchings? Are there records? Are there keys, rainbows, symbols, patterns, images, anything that shows up. I'm with, being with that in the moment, and just not really trying to do something with that, but thanking it and being grateful for what I'm seeing. And then I've learned to give the crystal skulls their space, and really let them get comfortable and do their thing before I start to work with them. So I let them figure out their new home, where they want to sit. Sometimes, they'll be placed with other crystals and crystal skulls. They'll be placed in a particular part of my room or the house. Sometimes I just place them next to me on my desk, and they just sit there, and I don't intentionally work with them, but the two of us are working together as a team, just percolating in the background, and I can feel that energy, and it comes through in, say, things that I channel or write, or just the way that I'm working or feeling that day. And so I just like to let it take its natural course, and let us adjust our frequencies to each other, and let them do whatever they want to do, and then we'll take it from there. So I feel that they do on their own a lot of stuff, and a lot that we might take for granted and think that we have to be the ones to direct that. And I don't think that's actually accurate. I think that there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and just by inviting them into our space, is what ignites that to take place. And then the process from there continues to just become more and more organic. And, after I've seen or felt or received information that they're ready, that's when I might take it to the next step with them. And that could be meditating with them. That could be holding them over a particular chakra or my third eye. Could be engaging, asking a question and receiving whatever comes through. It could be sleeping with them, putting them under my pillow. Sometimes I hold them and they'll stay in my hand all night, or putting it by my bedside. So there's different ways. I may also invite them into healing work that I do for myself or for others. Gridding, and they may be part of a collective like the speakers, and they have their work to do, and eventually we have our work to do. So that's different ways that the relationship starts to take form. But as you can see, it's this slow getting to know each other, kind of a courting process, if you may, with my crystal skull, and not just jumping right away into the relationship, but really nurturing, cultivating, and relishing in every moment of it. And having that open-heartedness always with them, and inviting them into everything, I feel is key, to let them know that you really want them to be there and you really want to work with them in the way that is of the highest good. And then you find out how unique they all are, because some of them they are shy, or they take time, and they like patience, and some are tricky, and some are fun, and some push our buttons, and some just like to be quick with things, some like to be slow with things. I mean, they're just all so different, and that's because they know what's best for us. And in reality, we know what's best for us through them. And so whatever their personality is reflecting is exactly what we need or want in our life at that moment. So even if they do push our buttons and challenge us, there's something our higher self knows would be good about that for us and would help us to grow in our lives and evolve. And so there is a beautiful relationship that develops, and they know exactly what's best to invoke our growth, and that's a beautiful thing. So if you are going to engage Crystal Skull, one thing that I like to make sure of for myself is to be very relaxed and in a present state. It's kind of like anything you would do. Say you were doing healing work for someone, or listening to someone who has some challenges they're sharing. You want to be very present for that experience. If you have a lot of dialogue and stuff going on, or you're rushed, then you're not going to be open to what's coming through, the richness of the moment. You're not going to hear the messaging. You're not going to be as present as you could be to receive things that are going to be sometimes very subtle, and so those subtle voices are going to have a harder time to speak over the louder ones if you have just all this stuff rushing through you. So wait until you're in that peaceful state is a good gauge for being able to get more from that experience. You don't have to rush things. Things do come to us in the right timing. So if you can wait or create that kind of space, I think that can be very supportive and effective for the type of communication that you'll receive. Sometimes I will go on a creative visualization journey with my skulls, but I like to let them take me where they want to go and show me different visions. Maybe it's colors, sensations, words, impressions. They may even give me a name at that point. So I like to allow them to direct that and guide me with that. And at least in my experience, job is to be open to that experience. And that doesn't mean that I'm just led anywhere blindly. I have an awareness within me, but I'm being playful and I'm being curious, and I'm flowing with the alignments that their frequencies are sharing with me. And if that feels good, then I'm going to continue going down the road. If it doesn't feel good, of course I'm not. So that's a personal gauge to keep in mind. But it's a space where seriousness is not needed. It may even actually hinder us. So when we engage our inner child more in this process, bringing in that wonder, that imagination, that part of us, I think that we find that things will stream through even more easily than if we are just being very serious and just logical and trying to analyze it all and trying to make sense of everything. And I'm not saying that that's easy, because if that's a lot of where you operate from mostly, it may be a little bit of a challenge, but maybe that's part of the silver lining or the richness and the gift of this relationship, is easing off of some of that a little bit more each time. And you'll discover a new relationship with that part of you just as much as the relationship is growing with your skull. So it's almost a sneaky way to get past our ego or logical minds and all of the doors and boundaries that they may put up. We sneak around and play, and then all of a sudden we have access to this whole field of possibilities. So that's fun. And trust, it comes with practice as well. Just as opening up to more playfulness within us, trust is something that takes nurturing and commitment to as well, and in doing on a regular basis and being open to it and practicing it. And that's how you learn to feel what is truth, what is your truth. So there's no wrong way with any of this. It's simply about trying and then doing something. Just see what feels good for you. And that's the joy of this. And the crystal skull almost gives us permission to do that, even if it's behind closed doors. It's not something, I'm here in front of all of you speaking about it, but nobody said you need to do that. You can do this behind closed doors with your crystal skull friend and go on an adventure with them. So there's not somebody that's going to sit there watching you and saying that what you're doing is wrong. Just go with how you feel and see where that leads you. And, just enjoy the journey. Enjoy that little bit of space. Maybe it's the only time in your life that you free yourself and liberate yourself into this experience. And maybe that's what your skull friend is there for, is to help liberate you into a whole new experience of yourself that you haven't given yourself permission to have an experience with yet, or you locked that part of you away, and then you get to bring that out again. So that's kind of a fun part of that relationship with your crystal skull. And again, you are unearthing, as we said, parts of yourself. And as you engage consciously with your crystal skull friend, you are engaging consciously with who you are. And that's a beautiful gift of this relationship. So you might be saying, well, what if this is my first time that I'm feeling called to bring a crystal skull friend into my life? How do I choose a skull friend? If it's my first, or just like from here on, I just don't know where to go. So I believe that they choose us just as much as we're choosing them. And again, with everything, I'll reiterate, there's not a right or wrong way around this, but it's really about following our feelings and the directions that are coming through you. I feel that if you're questioning something about a particular skull and having some little nudges or just feeling those draws, then there's a good chance there's already a messaging that there's something there drawing the two of you together, and there's more than just like looking at the skull, but that they may actually want to and need to be with you. Sometimes it can be about something you simply receive or download from seeing them, and that's all you need. So sometimes it's not about bringing them all home. Sometimes just seeing one in a store or online or at a shop, a person's shop, whatever. Just that little bit of connection that you have can activate something, and maybe that's all that's needed, and then you're able to move forward. So it's not that all crystal skulls or crystals or anything in general need to come home with you, but being present and seeing if there's something that lingers or deepens beyond just that initial activation is what you want to be curious about and see where that's going. So just something to think about, because there are a lot of amazing crystal skulls out there, and they don't necessarily all have to come home with you. And in fact, they may do more of their work if they were with somebody else rather than just sitting on the back of your shelf just because you thought it was pretty. That doesn't mean that's wrong that you brought them home, because there's still something there about that to be curious about, or they're still doing work, because as I said, even if we're not engaging them, they still do work. It's just that potentially somebody might have taken them into a different level of experience. So that's a way that we can just collectively make responsible and conscious higher self choices for the good of all, is to be present with what is coming through us in the moment and seeing, is it for the highest good that I bring this crystal skull home, or is it for the highest good that we just have this connection and I release them to someone else? You can ask questions like that. And of course you can seek out a particular type of stone or crystal that speaks to you because of the particular properties that it has, and that reflects something about your journey that you're on. So that could be a way that you go about bringing a crystal skull home, is having, doing research, having this intent, or maybe you even just received, that a particular type was what you needed in your life right now, and then put that intention out that it come to you through a crystal skull. So that could be a way of manifesting and having that revealed to you. You could just put it out there in general that you want to work with a crystal skull friend, and then seeing what perfect skull shows up. And a lot of times some unusual things can. Sometimes it takes long, sometimes it comes fast, sometimes there's a lot of interesting little dots and steps that take you there, people you meet, and all of a sudden it connects. But it's all stemming from that initial intention that you can put out there to draw it in. And then when you're doing that, it's about trusting the signs, right, that come, and the messaging and the feelings you receive when they do actually show up. So if you have an intention and you've put it out there of just a skull in general, of a particular stone type of a skull, and they show up, then trust in that moment how you're feeling when you're with that skull. And if it touches you somewhere, it might touch you in the heart, you might feel it in a different chakra because that's the one it's working with for you. There just could be some sort of sensation. So that's about body presence and about that body wisdom that speaks through us as well, because sometimes we don't know how to articulate in our minds, or we don't know how to interpret our feelings or our intuition, but our body can speak loudly. And so when we're around a crystal skull that is really meant for us, we might feel something very different happen within our body, in the frequencies, a tingling, something shifts, some kind of sensation, something within your body will move a different way. or feel lighter, or feel stronger, or pulse, or chills, or heat flushes coming through you. So just pay attention to that kind of thing, because that could be your sign and your message that this is the crystal skull that you intended and wanted to bring forth. So having that open heart, putting the intention out, listening, trusting, these become your guides on the journey to find and connect with a crystal skull who will be a co-creator. I love to use that kind of language with anything and anyone, is that every aspect that we work with is a co-creator with us, that we're not just doing things on our own, that we invite this dance, this relationship to the experience. And that just, it creates empowerment, reflecting back and forth between both people, and an honoring and a reverence. So I like to use that word, and especially with the crystal skulls, that they are co-creators with us, that we're both very powerful beings in our own right, that coming together we're even more powerful, and we get to co-create together with our shared wisdom and gifts. So that's one of the ways we can open ourselves, open our hearts to this new kind of relationship and journey with them. And you're going to be the best gauge for all of this, truly. As I've said before, your intuition, your feelings are the best gauge to go by. That doesn't mean that you couldn't get help from someone else, right? So if you want to engage a person to assist you with finding a crystal skull, that's okay. Just be in touch with your feelings through that process, right? Trust, no matter what the person tells you, how you feel about that particular skull, how you feel about the things that they're saying, and see if they resonate. And if they do, then it's perfect. They're reflecting you. Because while someone might intuit a skull for you, it's possible that they could have sight farther in the future of what might align down, say, the road for where you're headed. And again, that there wouldn't be a wrong with that, but maybe what's most supportive for you here and now is something else, something, a different skull might be where you're more ready for in this moment to be with than, say, the one that they see you with in 2 years from now. Now, that's not to say that if you got that one, that would be wrong, because there would be a perfection around that, and perhaps they'd be assisting you to grow into that future self of who you're coming into being. So it's just, again, about personal empowerment and really not placing power outside of yourself. Yes, you can take in somebody's reflections and opinions, but run them through your truth gauge and see how it feels with you. See how those choices sit with you, because your choices inevitably assist you in the perfect way, no matter what, as long as you're making the choices. And there could be a stronger alignment than, say, what somebody else sees for you. I always feel that you know more than you think you do. And somebody who wants to truly be a responsible outside guide and assist, I feel, would know how to ask the right questions to help bring that part of you out, so that they're not actually answering for you, but they help you to find the answers within you. And they don't make their voice louder, but they help to assist you in hearing that subtle voice within you. And so, again, not saying wrong or right about this, because a lot of people are approaching this for the first time and really, really don't know where to start, are afraid of trusting themselves, don't know how yet to trust themselves. And having that kind of guidance and assistance can be very nurturing and confirming for someone. All I'm saying is, don't doubt yourself, because even though at this moment you feel like you don't have intuition, somewhere I know you could find it. Like I said, even that body wisdom can help you with that intuition. If you be present with your body will give you messaging that maybe right now you can't hear in another way, but the body does actually speak quite loudly if you are present with it. And so you may get a beautiful reflection from it if you're doubting other areas. So crystal skulls are definitely, as we said, they're flourishing in in amazing ways, becoming enlivened in a very rapid speed and far spreading reach in the world right now. I believe this growth is in direct reflection of humanity's evolution and a mirror of just how much we are actually opening and shifting. That's my personal feeling. And they're a mirror of that, despite having so many diverse kinds of experiences playing out across the world right now that we see. I do feel things are actually shifting far more than we give it credit for. And I also feel that this multiplication of crystal skulls in our experience is speaking to the influx of communication, the communication wavelengths that are opening between us and the multidimensional aspects of ourselves, as well as the multidimensional consciousness within the cosmos itself, that we are inviting in the more we are opening up. I feel all of that rapidly happening, and even more than we're maybe even conscious of at the moment. But I really feel that. I feel the truth of that. When I say it, it really rings through my body. But I feel the crystal skull shape, like I said, can be a more relatable mirror for us and a way for us to receive information more easily that we don't always listen to within us, but in fact is us. But I also feel that relatability, as I mentioned, extends to even past the human forms of ourselves, and is really actually also bridging the relatability with our life forms or light forms of consciousness beyond Earth, be it extraterrestrial or simply cosmic, whatever word you would like to place there. So they're bridging that relatability that we might find challenge with in connecting and communicating or receiving information from, because that might feel scary or too strange to speak with those types of beings. So the skulls are acting as bridges and conduits and representatives for these forms of consciousness to speak to us now that we're ready to hear. And as I said, I feel that that's happening in a very potent way. There are these open channels that are streaming through because we are more ready than we think, and the skulls are a safe space for some of that to channel through to us until we can open our trust and get past some more fears so that it can come into being in perhaps an even more direct way. And I'm not saying that the more direct ways aren't already happening, because some people do experience that, but I think that crystal skulls are one way that it can still happen, if not so direct, through them. And that's a beautiful thing. So I think the skulls might be steps toward that relationship and communication upcoming on other levels we haven't experienced yet. This is beginning through our crystal skull co-creators, the bridges between so many layers and aspects of self and multidimensionality. So just another thing to ruminate on and see where you land with that. But a lot is taking place, and I just love that the crystal skulls are one way we can talk about this in a safe, sort of easier maybe way between more people. So that's a general info segment that I had felt guided to share about the crystal skulls. And now I'd like to move into the speakers and they're part of today's episode, to give them their time and to have a little bit more of an intimate experience with them as a way to expound upon the first episode and meeting them, so that we can delve more into a deeper, richer relationship with ourselves through them in upcoming episodes. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was one of the crystal skulls. And again, this crystal skull is not part of the 22, but stands on his own and has a very key role. I introduced you to him last time, very briefly at the beginning, but he deserves a little bit more formal welcome. So I am going to bring him forth. You may remember him. I love him. So this is the interpreter. Again, he stands on his own. The crystal skull is Munja, and his raven consort is Nira, and they are of the stone called the Chinese writing stone or chrysanthemum stone. You can get a good look, hopefully. And all of those little white markings on the stone, they do in fact look like characters, whether you think of them as Chinese characters or just hieroglyphic type of characters. That's what I love about this particular type of stone, is that it does look like a language on the stone itself. So a little bit about Munja's name. Munja means mind reader or lightning, and Nira means candle or light. So that gives you a little bit insight about them and their energy. And although they are pretty much the smallest, yes, they are the smallest skull on the gridded table here with the 22 speakers, size does not matter. The smallest can be mighty, right? And so they have a very potent and important role nonetheless, and are pretty much the intermediaries between all of the speakers in terms of communication. So they help not only to interpret languages between all of them, since they all reign from different places on and off Earth and may speak a different language, but they help to bring through clarity of understanding those languages also to me, and when I will work with them to channel things. And Munja and Nira, they travel in the frequency realms, if that makes sense. The frequency streams of energy, they weave harmonics and resonance in ways that bridge everyone between dimensional doorways, and bridging also time and space. It's almost like collapsing the intersecting dimensions. You got to be playful with this stuff when it comes out into one focal point of understanding, and to assist in clarity of the messages. So it's a very important role, not to be taken lightly. Again, being small does not matter. I'm just extremely grateful and honored for them to be with us. And they were one of the originals, if not sure if he was the actual first or in the first group, but he stayed the whole time, as I mentioned, because some came in and some came out before we settled in on the 22, but he was there from the start and he's there in the end, and I just love him. And so he did want to come forth because he has such an important role. May help us to understand this bridging aspect we're talking about too of what the crystal skulls do on an even another level. And he may have more to share in the upcoming episodes. I do not know. We find out as we go along who wants to speak. But that's Munja and Nira, and thank you for welcoming them in. So we did meet all 22 speakers last time, and I mentioned some of the other crystals that were on the grid. There are some that are just raw crystals from the earth. There are the 11 dragons, and there's the cosmic egg as well in the middle. Today, the 11 dragons want to be introduced, and again, it will be brief like the 22 were, but they just want to come forth because it's like this weaving that's happening. You know, each layer we build upon, just like in a painting, and you paint, you know, putting different colors and layers on top of each other to achieve an overall picture when you look back. That's what's happening here. So we're taking this in stages, and the dragons will help to weave or thread understanding of what's taking place. Might just be working behind the scenes and percolating in our minds, and also it's because they might step forward later with messages in other upcoming episodes. But because they're such important gatekeepers and way showers or way makers, I like to also say, their roles are very key here. They're protectors, protective guardians. They guard the keys within so that they are only accessed at the right timing and with a pure heart. That's one of the things that they do. And, you know, they're each of a different crystal or stone as well. So I'm not going to get into all the details. We're just going to introduce name and stone type so you can just see them, feel them. I've heard many times, even some of my animal companions have showed up for other people in dreams. Even though they've passed on now, they still come to people and work with people. And that can also happen with crystals and crystal skulls, that sometimes when we just see them and meet them and we have a resonance with them, that they start to work with us. These 22 are collective. They want to be with you just as much as they are with me. I'm just, you know, the one who gave them a home and a voice where they may not have had. And their role, though, is to be with you. And that's why they want me to present them and want me to introduce and share, because you can work with them as well on your own. They may show up for you even without me saying anything, in a dream or in a meditation. Their image could come through, a message could come through, their names, whatever. So this is why they're being shown. They're being shown in case there's some kind of bridging that they're doing that's between you and them. Okay? So let's get to our 11 dragon friends. We'll start with our first. We'll pick them up. So again, lighting, I can't do anything about that, my friends. So we'll just go with what we see, and at some point, maybe that'll shift, but at least you feel them, their energy, and can see them, and will know their names. So this is Cadence Malik, and this is a rose quartz, very pink and gemmy. So if it's not showing up, that's what he looks like. He has beautiful wings. And so rose quartz dragon, lots of little cute rainbows in him, some in his little face. I love the little ones here and little hands. But that's our standing, winged, quite jolly little Cadence Malik. So that's our first dragon. And our next one, this is the beautiful Andromeda. She's Amazonite. She's made from Amazonite. It's a beautiful stone. Just so you can get a look at her. So of course she's female. That's Andromeda. And then we have Aldon. And this is a green fluorite dragon. Very beautiful, translucent in the light. Aldon, the male dragon of fluorite, green fluorite. And then we move on to our beautiful Belige. She's tiger's eye, beautiful dragon. They all have slightly different face carvings. I just love this. It's very majestic and elegant. So you can see that it's one of my favorite dragon types of heads. So this is Belige, she's tiger's eye. And then we move to the very tiniest of all crystal skulls and dragons. And again, size does not matter, right? This is the Sweet Avery. This is Epidote in quartz, and it's a mini elven dragon. And he has the cutest, if you could only see, little rainbow at his nose. It's not going to show up in here, but oh my gosh, just the cutest. This little one, Avery, amazing. And he holds his own on the table with everyone, so much larger. I just love, so sweet. So that's Avery. And then we have this. This is a resting dragon. I don't know if you can see for sure, but it's a dragon on top, resting with the wings kind of wrapped around a rock. Goes kind of from light to darker, and it's smoky quartz. His name is Aladfar. And he has some beautiful rainbows too, but he's our resting dragon, very different from the others. And then we move on. Oh, here we go. This is Aldrich. Now, this is a quartz dragon head. And you can see up here, this is a point and makes a wand. So he's actually a dragon wand. And amazing rainbows. Just has incredible rainbows, especially up here in the third eye. So from the side, you can see. So he can be used as a wand. Aldrich. And then this is our next one. Oops, our biggest dragon head. Still in my favorite style. So this beauty is Myra. And she's a golden healer with dendrites, actually. I don't know that they show up, but there's dendrites in this section in the back, the beautiful area. And also in this front section of her face, just really gorgeous, and also some beautiful rainbows, but she's the largest of all. This is Myra, just beautiful, I love her. Okay, and then we'll move into a unique one. If you can see, it almost looks like a seahorse, right? So you have the dragon and the whole body that's nice, beautifully curved. And then in the back, there's a tiny crystal skull. So it's a dual dragon and skull. And each have a name just like Munja and Nira. So we have Asta at the top, that's the dragon. And in the back, we have Celia. And this is amethyst with smoky quartz. Lots of rainbows in there. Very elegant. And I love that the two of them work together. Asta and Celia. And we have our last two coming up. This is the second to largest beauty. This is Kintar. I love Kintar too. I love them all. So this is a Dream Chevron Amethyst. Again, the beautiful shape I love. Each face is always slightly different though. Chevron Amethyst. And that's Kintar for you in case she speaks to you. Give you a good look at everybody. Okay. And our last one. This is Quartz. It has a little bit of golden healer right at the tip of his nose in here. Lots of rainbows. And this is Bastion. Again, that beautiful shape. It's just so elegant. Very clear throughout this area and just very ethereal in this area. This is Bastion. So that's the 11 dragons. And now that introductions have been done, they might come to you or speak to you in a certain time window of your life. But now you'll know who it is because you've seen them and felt their energies at least. And at some point, maybe we'll learn a little bit more about them. But their presences are very strong. And even though, like I said, we're not going into them right now, I think you can probably feel them and some of them might speak to you. So that's the gift of this collective, is that we get to share whatever wisdom they want to share with us. So now that we've been introduced to them, it's time that we turn things over to two particular skulls of the 22 that wanted to speak to us in this episode. And we'll be winding things down with their messages, as well as a message from the collective of the 22. So the two that wanted to speak today, I actually felt them very strongly at the beginning, around when I was doing the first episode, that they were going to likely be the ones to step forward first. Something very strong about their energy spoke to me and what they represent, given what we're going through as a collective right now. So the way I've received their messages is through, I guess you would call it channeling. And that's just a process of me opening myself up to listening to their voice and then writing that down so that it could be shared. So it's not for me to change or interpret that, or try to infuse any of my personal feelings around it, but to just allow that clear space so that the highest clarity can come through for what they want to share, without any other confusing factors that come into play. So again, as I mentioned before about connecting with our crystal skulls, I want to be in a very peaceful space for that. So it wasn't until I had that kind of space and could sit with them and just really listen and not have other things going on that I sat with them and did that. So I will bring forth, oh, she's heavy, our first friend. So I did chant before I introduce her again. I did channel the info, like I said, before this episode, and wrote it down as it was channeling. So some might even call that auto writing, automatic writing. And I'll be reading you the information because, again, to be in that space to receive that kind of messaging, I can't do that, at least at this point, live. Maybe at some other point I will, but for right now, part of my process is to be with that purely without any kind of other interruptions. But I will read you what they had to say. So this, if it doesn't show up very well, the coloring, very pink and gemmy again, this is rose quartz with tourmaline, and our skull friend in front of you is Aviana. I love her. I love all of them, but she's just very, just beautiful in essence. Maybe that comes through with her. And I just love the uniqueness and power of this black tourmaline that she has at her crown. She also has a little bit of smoky quartz that you can't really see in her face, and some asterism in the back in her crown. So very, very unique, very beautiful. I think she has a wonderful expression as well. She is Venusian, as I mentioned in the first episode, and she represents the number 18 tarot card of the major arcana, which is the moon card. Her name, if it helps you to know her more, Aviana, means bird-like, graceful as a bird, way of grace, freedom, beauty, elegance, free-spirited, and having a strong sense of individuality. She's about love, but also self-love with boundaries. So in a time right now when you may be hearing a lot about self-nurturing and knowing love through yourself first, so that you can then give from that well, which is, a different way of approaching things, because we're always more focused on service to others, but the definition around that might have been skewed to give, but we can't give what we don't have, or we can't give if our well is empty. And that's what she demonstrates, is that self-love and nurturing that you cultivate within allows you to give of that kind of energy freely and in a pure kind of way. So knowing your boundaries is part of that, and knowing that that's not a selfish thing. It is actually a higher good thing, and of being of service, because then it comes from a very authentic, full, whole place when you are yesing and knowing to things and giving, and you're supporting other people to be empowered in that way through your personal reflection, and you're helping others to step into their higher selves and to have that kind of responsibility from the integrity of their being as well. So a little bit about her. And the moon card is about things coming to the surface, just generally deep intuitive awareness, or bringing those undercurrents to light. We're seeing a lot of that on the scene as well these days. Navigating the emotional waters, so key, because the emotional aspects of us is the hardest to work with and change. It's easy to do the mental stuff because that's logic and you can understand it a lot easier. Emotions don't have logic behind them, they feel. And so the moon card is about navigating those deep spaces in the subconscious and connecting you with your deeper instinctual guidance. So a little bit more depth around her to help you to see if she's speaking something that you need at this time, and you may expound upon some of the stuff I said. I'm only giving general things, but she did give us a message and I'm going to read it for you right now. So if you can sit there however feels best, with an open heart to receive, and see if anything in her message speaks to you at this time. The light is not where and what you think it is. If you go to the threshold, you will see that all points to non-duality and no one point is exclusive. The heart frequency holds the understanding sought to where once no hope was felt. The currents moving through you are the fabric of the cosmos. Do not be afraid of choosing love, for mission without love is blind foraging. Know yourself as love above all, and all will know your love as theirs. Thank you, Aviana. So we're going to move into our second skull who wants to speak. Oh, another heavy. So this is Alkebulan. And she, again, if you remember, it's like a reddish pink petrified wood skull. She has a very primitive look. That's what I love about her. And she holds very elder energy and like the ancient grandmother energy. Alkebulan, her name, means mother of mankind, Garden of Eden, oldest. The oldest and indigenous word for these things, and it's an ancient name in Africa that represents mother of mankind. So she is really representing origins as she speaks. And I'm obviously moving energy through my throat chakra as these guys are coming forth because I have to clear my throat. I love that. So this is, again, Alkebulan, and she is the number 15 tarot card, the Devil. So the Devil card speaks to a lot of things that we're facing these days too, right? So it's the ability to confront the inner shadows within us, kind of those demon aspects, things that have been haunting us for a long time coming up, working through fears and any inhibitions, any self-doubt, even hopelessness kind of feelings, things that bind or have bound you in life. So facing those darker aspects of self and helping us to release past suffering and patterns that put us in that sort of victim mode and suffering mode. So confronting darkness in order to liberate us and come into our wholeness, and helping to transmuting that energy, realizing the limitations and how they are choices that perhaps could even be self-imposed, and there's a different perspective around them that could help release that bondage kind of feeling, and that frees us, right? So confronting the fears also that set you free, and even temptations that we have of like those baser kind of aspects in life, and seeing them for what they really are, and that helps us then to come into true empowerment in our life. And that's the kind of empowerment that's not a powering over things, but it truly comes from within us in that sort of shared way. So Alkebulan has a message as well, as long as my throat chakra holds up. But lots of energy is moving through them as I'm holding them. Seems like since I got into the crystal sharing of everybody here, I can feel my throat doing a lot of stuff, so that's good. Moving things collectively. Maybe you'll feel some stuff with me. So her message came through before, and I will read it to you now. So take a moment and see if you can just be in your heart space. Doesn't mean that her messages for you at this time, but maybe something will sit with you for a later moment. You suffer? That is a folly of accepting limitation, humanity's bondage. Does Tara suffer, or does she flourish in recreation? Your eyes do you misfortune in gilding what you want and tarnishing what you don't. Why be there such vast fields if you only pluck the petals that fill the palm of your learned desires? All things that crunch beneath your feet are no less gilded than the crown worn merely of blood and lineage. Take heed of the quivers and quakes, for they yield chilling riches you've concealed out of shame. No more or less creators you are, and every seed you yield is a worthy child. Thank you, Alke Bulan. You gotta work out just to hold these crystal skulls, I'm telling you. So now, for this last segment, we are going to receive a longer message, and it comes from all 22. So again, this is a message that came to me before recording this episode, and I'm going to read it to you to the best of my throat chakra ability. And I hope that you can sit there with open heart again, breathe into whatever resonates for you, leave behind what doesn't, shut it off at this moment and not listen to the video anymore. Whatever feels right for you, that's perfect. But this is the message from the collective, and I'm going to read it to you now. We are the voices you've forgotten, but the rhythm that has composed new pulses nonetheless. We course through your veins, through the roots beneath your feet, the space in and around you, and the synapses of a cosmology you cannot comprehend as of yet. No matter. Understanding is not a prerequisite for knowing, although you place importance on reason you compartmentalize in a space you think holds the only knowledge. We say all parts, appendages, in-betweens, and beyond are of the knowing. Once you realize this simple truth, you realize your becoming is an illusion. You have always been, and we are part of that being that is you. Although we speak through faces and places as diverse as you, diversity is within the same particles of one nebulous eye, blinking drops of stardust from the lens of antiquity. It is not so much a lineage or ancestry we speak of, but the sustained pulse of beats without tethers to a story. We come to you on these pulses, but without agenda, since your beat will never cease just because you listen or not. We come because the frequency has risen, open and clear enough for us to travel more direct now. We come simply in rhythm with you, as we were never lost, only uninvited. Access is now made of ease where once we could not flow with you. If it is true the ready are present, then ready you will see we've been to reacquaint you to your greatest unbirthing. You see, where you are requires this birth, but where you have always been requires nothing but pulsing. Until next time, greetings once again, for we have missed the knowing stripped away. Yes, we have missed you. Have you missed yourself? Here and there is nothing more than a folding. Take a piece of paper and fold it in half again and again, and there you have a glimpse of your truth and the way we have journeyed this return in all its glorious being and undoing. So deeply we pulse now in reverence to the ready. May we go beyond and meet some blink of an eye where the knowing has sustained. So thank you to the speakers. Thank you for listening. Whatever that means for you, let that sit and see if something comes forth. And if not, maybe it's a seed for another day. But thank you for being here and adding your presence of an open heart to the readiness they spoke about, as these messages would not be possible without the co-creation we're all sharing. So deep reverence to all of us. So the last thing they wanted me to speak about, which I won't elaborate a lot about in this episode, but just as a seed, it was a surprise to me, because I wasn't aware this was going to come forth, but I'm honored to be able to share that. The speakers told me that they are ready to lend support to others, and that is why they're stepping forward more. They will continue to share messages and episodes as we have, but they will also take that beyond, and it's beyond what they've even just been doing for me. So until now, I've been listening to everything that comes through them between us, and how I was to work with them, and the scope of what that work would be about. And first, that was just between me and them, to prepare me. And it was to help me to get into a new space with energy work, and to help channel their messages. So what I've noticed in working with them for myself so far is that they're helping me to harness a greater wholeness of myself, if that makes sense. And that energy, a level of energy I haven't yet, and it comes from a most deepest integrated part that is multi-dimensional and always working for the highest good. And I've noticed that in this level of work with them, that things have manifested instantaneously, like literally in seconds. But what it asks of me is to involve my complete fullness of my entire being, as much as I'm capable of doing, to meet the level of theirs, and to not fear that power within me and the gifts that I have, that's an essential part of this, and that's part of what they're teaching all of us. So it's not just about me. What I'm sharing is reflective of what's happening for us all. And that is the energy that's coming through the work when I'm channeling with them. And that's what they want me to share, as I said, beyond just myself. So I'm not talking about the details around that here to take away from the episode, but you will find a link to my website, as always, underneath this video. And if you are interested in receiving that type of support, then that will be an offering, and as well as channeling individual messages specific to people. So that's what they wanted me to share. There is a little bit of, I wouldn't say fear, but yeah, it's an uncomfortableness with that. And until I was ready to embrace that, because they would never force me to do something, I would never force myself to do something, then that was not ready to come forth yet. So it's a beautiful space that they've supported me to come into, which I feel, again, we're all reflective of each other. And if there's a readiness happening, like I mentioned, in a wider way, then that means that many of us are readying for this type of thing. And that's beautiful. It's like, really beautiful. So I'm excited about that. And again, you can look at my link if that resonates with you at all and see what that's about. But that's something at this moment that they are saying we're ready for, putting that out there for you as well. And this will come, it's not available at this moment, but depending on when this airs, winter solstice is what they're saying. So you'll be able to check that out. The details will be on there at that point and not sooner than then. So a lot of exciting stuff. Again, this is all reflective of the collective moving into a state of now readiness, in a state of open channels and stuff streaming through more clearer than ever, and that we are ready to take things on a whole new level. And the more we come together to do that, and the more power we have through that co-creation. So I hope that you will stay connected, and I always welcome any comments, any ideas, any questions. You can put that under the video as well. So don't be afraid to voice yourself, because we want to hear you just as much. And I'm always surprised because I didn't know all that was, and I still don't know all that will be down the road, but I'm taking this one step at a time and being very vulnerable and sharing that as the process is unfolding with you, because I feel that is part of that kind of empowerment, and that kind of invitation into more is to embrace the strength of that vulnerability within all of us, and to feel safe enough to share from the authenticity of our hearts. And that purity is the most, it's the most beautiful thing that there is, if we can do that. So if in any way I can help break down those barriers by moving through that kind of stuff with you vulnerably, then that's my greatest gift. That's the gift of embodiment here and now. So thank you again for being here, joining, co-creating, supporting, giving all your love. I feel the love. Episodes will continue. We're going to have some great guests. Next up is going to be Lisa Davis of the Lemurian Rose. I'm really excited for her to come on and talk to us about the crystal skulls. The speakers will be coming forth and have probably some more messages for us. And those messages will always come from the heart of us as a collective. So that's me and you. And since they're reflecting that wisdom within, that we are learning to embrace as our own, then that's what's so beautiful about that. If you can embrace that perspective, that anything and everything coming through something outside of ourselves is truly just what is wanted to channel from within us, then maybe you'll feel more empowered every day. We're also going to have some more inside looks with the master carver from Egypt, Modi Ra. So stay tuned, because I believe we're going to be talking about some new stone finds, some ancient rare stones that he just came upon that he hasn't had before. So we'll talk about those, maybe get into a little bit of the levels of the stones, and who knows what else. I'm sure we're going to have some other gifted healers talking with us, and I'll take on whatever the Skull Collective here of the speakers wants to bring through, and anything that you have questions about as well, or that we're sensing, even if you don't tell us, that you'd like to hear, then we'll bring that forth. So until next time, lots of love. huge gratitude from heart to heart. And as always, may all possibilities be open to you. See you soon.